Welcome to the International Art Doll Registry podcast, where we talk about doll making through education and supporting our small businesses. I'm Leslie, and I'm here with Bambi.
Hi, everybody. I'm Bambi.
So, this episode, we are going to be talking about how does doll making help with mental health. Now, you as a school teacher, Bambi, I know you probably have had lots of courses on this, especially things that you have to be aware of for in your classes. Can you share a little bit more of what you have on that?
Oh yes. My goodness. As I mentioned last time, I taught kids that were like 13 to 14, so they're already going through puberty, which is like the first real difficult thing that we have to go through in life. And plus, with things like COVID and so many things, I also always taught in schools that had a lot of at-risk students. So there are a lot of things to look for. And doll making was something that I could bring into the classroom. Working with polymer clay was such a great outlet for them, just something to do with their hands. And so many more kids today seem like they have things where they have to touch things, and they need,
Oh, definitely.
like the fidget spinners and things
Yes.
like that. They want to play with slime and different kinds of things like that, because they need that type of that texture and stuff. It kind of helps to calm them and stuff. And that's one of the great things I love about clay. You can just massaging it and getting it ready. It's just it just kind of takes you off into a different plane.
Exactly. Well, that's just it. It's kind of what I was thinking about. It's meditation. I mean,
Yes.
you aren't having to sit there and quiet your mind per se through a chant or whatever, but as you're working the clay and you're watching the clay, you just kind of go a little bit outside your body, and it's a meditation.
And it's really nice because, another thing is when you're working with clay, you cannot you cannot watch TV. You cannot have something on a screen that you're going to look at while you're making something with clay, because you can't do them both at the same time. I'm a, always love having some music or something going on in the background, but I'm also a very big, a big reader. I'm a big reader. I love reading. That was always kind of an escape for me. And I love that I can, I kind of was always against electronic readers and audiobooks, that kind of thing. But I
Yes,
love now that I can listen to an audiobook while I'm making something with clay. It really combines two of my favorite things. And it keeps me away from the TV, which is so full of just depressing things right now.
toxic energy. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so that's a come when you were mentioning it, that's one of the solutions that doll making has, as you just said, working with the clay, you use your hands, you get that texture, and so that's a movement, which is one of the first things that comes up with when they say with mental health is they're looking at the big movements like doing yoga and stretches and whatever, but you don't always have to do the big movements like that either. Just even the small
Oh,
ones with
absolutely.
your
Those
hands.
fine motor skills, it's important when we're toddlers, and it's also important as we, age as well.
Mental health is coming up so much more. I don't know if it's because we're aware of it to have, or the same, maybe it's because we do have more tools for them to use, but that
I'm as a teacher, as a long time teacher, I'm an older now, and I feel like I was in the education system for a long time, and I've seen they have a lot of tools, and it's almost like they have too many tools. They have too many
that's
things to rely on. They don't have to rely on themselves. They don't have to accept
exactly that's
responsibility.
yeah,
They
that's
don't have
kind of
to
where I was going. Yeah,
self-regulate,
yeah,
you know.
good.
When we worked with kids who had special needs, we learned a lot about teaching them to self-regulate. But we don't do that enough with students who are just, regular ed students, students who don't have special needs. They need to understand now how to control their anger, how to control their sadness, how to
Recognize it.
express themselves. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so that kind of goes into the therapy angle, which is great, but not everybody can afford that, nor is it always available. And so that's really where your doll classes or your community that, because I know that when it comes together for when anytime you have a group of people come together, that's still where you get to talk and you get to hang out,
Certainly.
and that's a therapy, you know.
And I honestly, I know a lot of people benefit from therapy. I certainly would never knock therapy, but of the people I've known who've gone to therapy, very few of them have ever been 100% honest with their therapist.
Oh,
And
totally.
so that
Yeah,
it
but
doesn't
you
really work. But
yeah.
when you're just doing like self therapy, you're going to be 100% honest with yourself. And so I think that molding clay and creating characters and learning new skills and all of those kind of things that go along with this really help in that area.
Well, and I find for myself, I talk to my dolls as I'm creating them. So
Certainly.
again, that's still a therapy, that's still voicing what you're seeing or hearing, so that once you say it out loud, you will hear it. And therefore, it gives you a way of having to really understand what you're going through.
It's so true. We come up with so much background and character traits and personality things that go with our dolls that nobody ever really sees. I'm a writer. I've been writing romance novels since, back during the bodice rippers of the 80s. And I always that was pretty much all I read back then. But now my I read a lot of different things, but my favorite thing to read now is fantasy. And so I've just decided that I'm going to start writing some books that can go along with my dolls because my brain is working so much while I'm creating a doll, from its face to its ears to why its hands look the way it does, what kind of feet it has, or if it's wearing shoes and how that fits into the story, to their clothes for sure. Oh my gosh, so many things going through my mind that I feel like, gosh, I need to tell people about this.
Yeah.
And what better way to do that than to write a book?
Well, and that's again, that's what brings them to life.
Yes.
And to be honest, that gets over that. To me, my biggest pet peeve is dolls are scary, because as soon as you
Yes.
get to know them, they're no
Yes.
longer scary. and
Yes.
and so therefore, by us being able to share that which has gone into them, that allows you to get to know them. But that's all part of that therapy, because whatever you are putting into your character is always still a part of yourself, something that you are wanting to express. And
Certainly.
so that's just again a one-on-one therapy with your doll and you.
Right.
In fact, that's how come one of my favorite stories that I had from when I was teaching doll classes is I had an older doll lady in her 50s, and she had a mother that was in a nursing home that she wanted to make a doll for her birthday or something that was coming up. So her mother was about 80 years old. So she decided that she was going to have her mother pick out the doll that she wanted to sculpt, never realizing the can of worms that she was opening up. Because what had happened was, when her mother was about 12 years old, her mother decided she was now too old to be playing with dolls, and took her favorite doll that she had and said that you would give it to your younger sister. So she was
Oh,
basically like, just like that, lost her favorite friend and had to
oh,
give it away.
oh my
And
gosh.
that process still bothered her clear up until she was in her 80s. And so with her daughter saying, okay, we're going to pick out the doll. Do you remember the hair? Do you remember how she was dressed and everything? So her daughter actually created that doll for her again, and actually was able to help heal her mother with this process, because she was able to now let that hurt go.
Oh, that is so amazing.
Yeah.
It is, no matter how old we get, we always remember that special doll that we had as a child. There was
Mhm.
always that one doll that was just that we just loved, and it was such a special thing to us that we've never forgotten it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then to have it just kind of like ripped away from you.
Oh,
Yeah.
and given away to somebody else. Oh my gosh, another sibling that you have to watch play with it every day. Oh, no way.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We won't even go to that family dynamics, but
Oh,
yes. But that was really, like I said, a cool part to even be a part of that, helping with her process and stuff.
sure.
So,
Yeah.
so that's a come. I strongly urge doll classes, but we don't always have the option, especially as we are limited in so many stores are just not offering them like they used to. Doll shops are certainly not around like they are, but at least that's the nice thing about, as you say, technology, because now we can at least have classes online. and
Yes.
and so that even with the online Zoom classes, or whether or not you take a YouTube class or something, you still, well, especially here with the IDR, again,
Oh
another
yeah.
opportunity to be able to connect with other people of similar interests, whether or not we're in Italy or Spain or
I just
Alabama.
love that. I love that. The meetings that we have when we kind of all get together on Zoom, we have people all over the world. It's so cool to be able to see all these people from all over the world. That's a phenomenal thing. So wonderful to have somebody I can just ask a question. Like I have this burning question in my mind. One of the I'm a YouTube junkie. Almost everything I've learned has been on YouTube because I kind of started sculpting pre-COVID. And, by the time I really was getting into it, COVID happened. So I couldn't go. There weren't people meeting up and sharing ideas and, techniques and things like that. So I watched a lot of YouTube videos on how to, uh, on sculpting, and that's where I've learned most of the things I've learned. But one of the, you watched a lot of different mediums because we talked before. I don't know if we've talked about the different mediums of clay that we can use and stuff. And one of them is called monster clay, and it's a plasticine oil-based clay that never hardens.
Oh,
And
great.
so I know, so well, they use it a lot in movies and things like that. And they'll make a statue of something and it holds detail really, really well. That's why they like to sculpt with it. And then they'll make a plaster cast of that. And then they'll use that to create the prosthetics and those kinds of things for different characters in movies. Well, to make a long story short, which is almost impossible for me, um, the clay never hardens, and you have to create a mold, and then you create a plaster or something like that before you paint it. And so I see these artists sculpting with this clay, and then they immediately start painting it. And I wonder, how can you paint this clay that's never going to get hard?
Mm-hmm.
But who can I ask? I don't know who to ask that question to. So it's great to be able to go into a community where you have some groups and different people who use different types of clay, and I can say, hey, why are you guys painting your monster
Mm-hmm.
clay? What's the point of that? So yeah, community is something that we can reach out to people that there might not be any other person right here in my city who uses clay, who does any kind of sculpting, but I can find somebody else halfway across the world who can answer my specific question.
Well, it's so funny because I'm a second child. I had an older sister, and she's was about 4 years older than me. And so that's a come. I always thought, it's really brilliant being the second daughter, because I can see my sister go out and do the stupid mistakes and saying, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, right.
That's the same thing with doll making. I can come to our class and say, has
Yes.
somebody tried that? And you say, oh, yeah, I tried it. It didn't work. And say, yep, I'm not doing that one. You just saved me a whole bunch of money.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly right.
But the other thing was, I always found out too, that was really interesting about one of my doll classes, was that one of my students had actually been in a car accident, and she had had whiplash, very, very severe, to a point where she was constantly in pain. The pain
Hmm.
was never ever gone. And that's where the doctor told her that she needed to find something to be able to take her mind off the pain. That was the only way she could deal with it, which is again your mental health. And that's where she came to doll making classes. And that's where she said that was her 1 hour that was totally free of pain, because she was so focused on her dolls that she never thought about the pain. And so
Oh,
that's how come doll
that is,
making can
oh
give
yeah.
you so many opportunities. It's just amazing.
So many, so many. And even people who have, you know, um, we talked earlier, I usually kind of go back to my students because that was such a big part of my life for such a long time. But I had so many students with ADHD, and it seems like it's so much more prevalent in recent years than it was when I first started teaching. I don't know if it's just diagnosed differently
Mhm.
or what's going on with
Yeah.
that. But one of the things that I love about sculpting and making these dolls versus my other creative outlet, which is writing, is, I can be done in a session. I can make a doll in a day. If I start in the morning and work all the way through, I can have a finished product, in a set in one sitting,
Hmm.
which you can't do with writing for sure. It takes months and months and months and months. And so I know for a lot of my students, um, part of the challenges they had with being creative was their attention span
Oh yeah.
was only so long, and they could only focus for a little while before they needed to move on to something else. So it was a great way for them to be able to to start something and have a finished product, even if they have a short attention span, and then they can move on to something else, and maybe it might even just be a different project with the same medium or something.
Hmm.
But it was really, really a really good benefit for them. How many
Well,
times did I say really right then?
well, I think too, the fact that when you talk to attention span, that's because that's all they've been exposed to. Because I mean, when everything's so instant on your internet and everything, they're not used to being told to sit in the corner and read for an hour or whatever, like we were sometimes told to do,
They
or go
cannot.
play by yourself for an hour without having, your Game Boy handy or whatever. And
Yes.
when you start learning your doll making skills and you
Yes.
get caught up in the story that's coming to you, you find that your attention gets dragged out into it longer and longer because you're engaged with it, so that's
Oh,
again.
certainly.
Yeah.
And scrolling has just compounded that problem.
Oh,
Scrolling
totally.
either through social media, scrolling on YouTube. I'm going to watch this video for 5 seconds. No, it's not grabbing me. I'm scrolling to the next one. And young people are really just giving it just a few seconds. And if it's not holding them, they're moving right on to the next one. So I think, people who are already have a predisposition to having a short attention span. They're just kind of feeding into that.
Oh, totally. Yeah. And that's again, as you said, we're not even feeding into that. We're also creating it. Because you also mentioned too something about your mom that your doll making also helped with.
Well, my mother, several years before my mother passed away, we lost my youngest brother, and it was very difficult for my mom. Uh, she would just, her mind would just constantly be going, 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 going. She could never kind of shut her mind off. She had trouble sleeping. She had trouble concentrating on things if she would try to read or listen to things, that sort of thing. So she kind of picked up on it when I started sculpting and started making fairy houses and fairy doors. And she kind of latched on to that. And so it was something we could sit down and do together, and I could kind of teach her different things to do. And so she picked up on it really quickly, and she enjoyed it so much. And it really helped to just calm her mind and help her to focus on things so that she wasn't forever just having her mind just going a million miles an hour, just
Mm-hmm.
having that like we talked about earlier, that feeling of having that clay in her hands, and kneading it, conditioning it, making it softer, and then creating something with it, really was a wonderful outlet for her to kind of work through her sadness and her depression. She suffered a lot with depression
Oh yeah.
after that. And so from that standpoint, to me, I thought, oh my gosh, if we could just turn everybody who suffers from some kind of, just mental struggle. It seems
Mm-hmm.
like we all have some kind of struggles that we're going through emotionally, mentally, familially, our families, just so much going on right now, and so many things that we can't control, that we worry about and stress about, that are completely out of our hands. And it
Mm-hmm.
just gives us an opportunity to have something actually in our hands that we can look at, and that's not going to have any distractions. While you're working that piece of clay, there aren't going to be any ads popping up, there aren't going to be any news breaks popping up, and none of those kinds of things. So it's definitely a good thing to do if you feel sometimes like you just you don't know what to do in the world right now.
Exactly. It just like I said, allows you that window to be able to heal.
Yes.
Well, then we will leave it at that with the idea that we will then look forward to seeing what else that we are bringing up because doll making does have so many things that it brings to it. All
Yes.
right. Well, then we will see you in the next pod down the road, dear.
Goodbye, everybody.
To check out our website links and Facebook pages that I'll have down in the comments below. Thank you for listening.